Hi, thanks for joining me. In this video, I'm going to do a demonstration of an abstract painting titled Inevitable. I'll explain to you my process of how I use simple geometric shapes and certain techniques along with blending, shading, and composition to create depth, perspective, and texture. I hope you enjoy it. Okay, we're going to start off with a burnt umber and a lot of medium. Apply some medium to the canvas. This is going to make things a lot easier. What this does is it creates a smoother surface to work off of, so the friction is less, and of course makes the blending a lot easier. I don't cover the whole canvas with it. I leave some areas blank, and in other areas I put medium, for the simple reason that the blank areas that have no medium on it, just raw canvas, creates a different texture, a different type of blend with the paint. So I don't want to start off too heavy. I like to keep it a little bit neutral. So we're going to apply some burnt umber here. Use a lot of medium because it makes a nice wash. The wash changes values, as you can see. Start out real dark, then you can push it to a lighter color without getting other colors involved at this point in time. I'm going to work off of my same composition grid that I explained in the first DVD, in the fundamentals, working off of the quarters and the thirds. To me, this applies to any painting, be it an abstract painting, a landscape, seascape, still life. Doesn't matter what you're painting. I think composition is important, and that quarters and thirds grid works well. Okay. Now I make sure everything lands where it should. I'm staying away from creating a center focal point. Now we're going to bring in some Payne's Gray. It's a really great color for especially working on a base. You can actually make it yourself. Ultramarine blue, Mars black, any variation you want. A little bit of blending. I want some hard edges too. I don't want everything blended. And if you have sections that have both hard edges on one side blended on the other, it actually makes it appear to rotate, so it gives you it helps with the depth. I'm seeing too much of a center line here. I got to break that up. Okay, this is a very rough shape, but the composition is there already. The balance is there. It's comfortable, and then we're going to add on to this. Now, while this is still wet, I'm going to take advantage of the fact that it's a water-soluble acrylic, and I can actually pull some of these colors out again with water. I'm going to implement a couple of shapes. This is going to start right here. Pick up some water. Acrylic is such a versatile material. As you can see, I'll use pretty much anything in a painting. I'm always looking at things that might create a nice texture. And you can wipe this right out just with water. Now, because we fade this away here, it actually gives a depth that sets that ring back a little bit. Looks like it's inserted into that color arrangement there. Now that we have white over black here and here, now we're going to do just the opposite. I'm going to start off with the burnt umber again. Stay away from the center, get a good composition. And let's throw it in there. Magic number 1, 2, 3. In a very short amount of time, we've got a nice foundation for a solid composition, and what I'm hoping will come out to be a nice painting. Now, something as ridiculously simple as putting a dark edge here, putting it on this side of the white ring, not on that side. Suddenly I have a different surface because the color variation, the color is different, the value is different. So right away that changes the plane. See, here it looks like the ring is just going through and you've got the same background. I'm going to continue to clean this track here until the paint decides to solidify a little bit. I believe I'm going to add again yet a smaller ring and then a very, very small one. I have to keep the number odd, either 1, 3, 5, 7, no even numbers. One more thing I'm going to do is apply a little burnt umber here. Okay, going into this, do I know exactly what I'm doing? No. Do I know exactly what the outcome's going to be? No. But I do know this. Put your brush to the canvas, get started, and then it'll just start falling together as you go. So, a good foundation to start with. Now we're going to use another one of my favorite colors, Raw Sienna. Not very opaque, it's very transparent. It has an interesting yellow tint to it, so when you're applying washes over it, you get some really beautiful results. Now I've got light coming in here. I have to keep all this in mind. I have to keep in mind at all times. Composition, keeping the grid in my mind, looking at the canvas as a whole. I want to know where the light's coming from. I want to know where the shadows are going to go. You use raw sienna sparingly. The different variations of it when you put washes over it are great. And just because it's a very transparent color doesn't mean you pour it on heavy. I want to use this everywhere. I need to keep the balance good too. I like a light area here and here. Don't want all my corners light, which they happen to be for right now, but that's, for me, that's a no-no. Might want to pull this forward a little bit, so we're just gonna draw that in, and of course this corner gets darkened. I like to use a vignette when I paint. More than 90% of my paintings, I vignette them to a point where I always like the outside edges darker. So we'll just put a little bit of this stuff here. Okay, I want to change the value here a little bit. Put that raw sienna on top of the Payne's gray. Suddenly I'm picking up a nice brown. Just love combining washes and see all the colors you get. It's great. And now because that's been changed in color and value, now we have a different plane. You can see that this is separate from there. I need a little bit here too, I believe. Okay, and while this raw sienna wash is drying, before it dries completely, I'm going to give it a very, very mild splash. Not heavy like the first time, but just enough to keep it all tied together. Perfect. Okay, now we're going to let that splash sit for a minute and stay wet while the raw sienna paint around it dries, and then we're going to draw those lights up again like we did in the beginning. Okay, it looks like our raw sienna is set up nicely. Now before our water dries, we're going to go in and pull it up. This is a much more subtle texture because the wash is such a light color. It doesn't show up like it does against the really dark. But it does show up just enough. Get some real nice looking depth to what we're doing. Okay, beautiful. Okay, now I've taken some Payne's Gray, watered it down so it's very, very fluid. I'm going to use a template. I'm going to put an outside ring here, but I don't want a real sharp, clean edge. I want it to have some character. I want it to be rough and ragged. And the way to accomplish that is that we're going to spray water. And then when the template hits it, the paint's going to go pretty much everywhere. Okay, so I take this plastic template. It's got an edge here. I'm going to blacken that all in, center it, bang. And that is going to give us a nice raggedy edge. If I didn't spray the water on there ahead of time, then you put it down, you'd basically just have a ring sitting there, which is, works good in some instances, but this particular thing I want rough and sloppy. Okay, now we got to center this. Go. Push it down. Move it a little. And now we're going to take a smaller template, do the same thing in reverse. Now as you can see how the paint dissipates, which is fine. We're going to let that sit like that for a moment. Time to get out your wet brush and start pulling some of this out. Okay, this ring here, it's dissipated too much. It was too much water, so I need to hit it one more time. Good, good. While I'm here, I'm going to play a little bit. This here creates a little emphasis on the ring. Again, I have 3 rings. I want to kick that up to 5 now. There's not enough to balance yet. Thinking this would probably have to go, I don't want to be centered in that space, so I want to come a little closer maybe. There's a lot of things to take into consideration when you do this. These two can't line up on the same axis. Now I don't want the center of this and the center of this to fall on the same axis. So it's kind of important. The placement is very important. I think this is a good spot for this, and the other one will probably have to land in up here somewhere. So anyway, we'll start with this. Same program. I'm going to spray it down. Now it's the same thing. Pick up the paint, put it on the edge. And we're going to set it right here. So this is very rough and raggedy and shredded edges and so on, which is good because it's in the busy area of what's going on. This one here we're not going to use quite as much water. I want a little bit neater edge. And of course it's smaller, which is going to have a lot to do with it also. Give me a second to find my placement here. Perfect. Okay. Okay, we're going to put you right here. Okay, so we got good balance going on. One thing I like to look at when I'm doing this is taking into consideration how all the centers line up with these. This in relationship to this, that in relationship to that. They all work together, and that's how you'll create your balance. This I don't like though. This is, oops, beautiful. There we go. Pull it out. Good. Okay, we're going to do the same thing here. Once this is dry, I'm going to go in here and I'm going to put in some lighter color, start to give that a little bit of shape. This here I'm getting a little too much repetitious pattern, which I don't like. I'm going to take some of that out. I think I want to emphasize this one area here. So you can feel the pull between them. Start and putting on the next layers, I do need to go in and bring back some of the whites. Some of them got beat up here a little bit, and they need to be fresh and clean when we apply color. Grab a little titanium white, What I do want to do is I just want to freshen some of this up here. Now we're going to lean to the outside edge on this one. Starting to put in some light and dark that's going to give them a little more dimension. And because I do want to make these eventually look more round, I need to find a highlight area. I'm going to say about 1/3 of the way in. Blend it out. I see one little spot that needs some help here. Top of this ring is flat. Beautiful. All right. Okay, this is great. I'm really excited. We're all set. Our values are there. We've got whites all the way to darks. We've got our yellow base in again. We're on the mark with the composition and everything. Like the subject matter, like the feeling I'm getting out of it. It's going to be great. Okay, this is all dry now. Looks good. I'm very, very happy with it. Now all we have to do is just start adding color and start refining some of the textures. I'm going to pick up a lot of medium. I'm going to start out, even though I want to jump right in with a cerulean blue. Cerulean blue is a very potent color, very opaque. One drop goes a long way, so to speak. I like to start out with a cobalt blue. It doesn't overpower everything. It doesn't turn all your yellows green instantly. It's a very subtle color. It just works well. Going into these darker areas first. Just put in a very light wash of this cobalt blue. Because cerulean blue is so opaque, I can go over this Payne's Gray with cerulean blue. It'll cover it right up. I want to stay away from that right at this point. We'll pick up a little bit here. To me, this is kind of a safety net because this blue just doesn't go crazy on you. As you can see, I go into the white areas. I'm still getting the blue that I want. A nice steel blue, but yet over the yellow it doesn't turn green on me. Now the one thing blue does do in any painting, it has a tendency to go back, which is good because it's an easy way to create depth. I'm looking at this and I'm going to have to take the blue and lean it over this way a little bit. I just love this area here. It goes back so far. Even though this is a larger light area, I just don't have the same thing going on there. So the one thing I'm going to do is I'm going to knock out some of this blue up here. There we go. Okay. Even though balance is important, not only in subject matter and positioning, but balance is also important, obviously, in value and in color. Which is just a natural tendency to do, too, so you have to fight it a little bit. You have a tendency, well, if I got blue over here, I need blue over here, so it balances. Well, that's not always the case. Okay? It's okay to balance the color, but be cautious of repetition and pattern. Yeah, this is a great color, just a great color. See, one thing I'm going to do is over here we've got an immense amount of blue in this area. I want to retain the balance without creating a pattern. I'm going to go over here and I'm going to drop in just a tiny bit of blue. And that's going to be right here. Good. Now I've got a great balance. Blue here, no repetition. Perfect. And while this is drying, we're going to go back again. With a little splash. Every time I do that, it just kicks the painting back a little bit more, a little bit more. It always keeps that nice rich depth cooking all the time. Very light, very subtle. There. Woof. Look at the wonderful depth we have here. And I can take this now, this blue, as I overpaint a red, a rose, that'll turn purple. The color variations are unbelievable when you do it this way. I'm going to start off with some rose. Just want to see what kind of an effect we're going to have here. Ooh. It creates such a beautiful shade of violet, it's almost hard to believe. It's nice overpainting. Very, very thin, very, very light. Don't forget, you can keep adding to it and adding to it and adding to it. And as this rose color comes up into here, want to keep my light areas as light as possible. I don't want too much color to get in there or it just drowns it all out. So I have to keep that a little bit light up there. What we're going to do down here, we're going to add to this, I'm going to take a little bit of crimson and add it with the Payne's Gray. That's going to give us a nice deep maroon color. We've got our blues over here. We're going to bring in some of our reds and earthy tones over here, which is going to be great. Just like we have our sharp edges here with the Payne's Gray from when we did the initial base, we're doing the same thing here with the rose. It doesn't all have to be blended. Have to drop this down a little bit. Have to darken it up afterwards. Take a little crimson, Payne's Gray. It gives us a nice deep burgundy. Then we have a heavy area here. This is a little blank. I'm gonna have to bring some of this in here. Again, keeping balance with the color without creating repetitions or pattern. That little touch right there kind of ties that in together. Great. And just as we dab the blue over here for a moment, we're going to use the same process. I'm going to bring that right in here. There we go. Yeah. All right. Okay, while these reds are still wet, we're going to again splash a little. Now we're going to let that sit for a minute. As the paint around it dries, we're going to pick it up and we're just going to continue with this process. Okay, now that we let that dry a little bit, I'm going to go in here and pick up the water spots. Okay, now I'm going to use a little Payne's Gray again. Down here I want to darken up a little bit. I don't like getting such a light color so close to the edge. Plus I don't like it so defined towards the edge. I like to keep the crisp image towards the center, and then as I get towards the outside, have it get a little fuzzy. See, because this has been darkened and the light is still over here, automatically that makes you wander right over into this sweet spot here. Okay, same thing here. We're going to darken up the outside edges. Darken up a little bit around here. All it does is keep the light where it's supposed to be. Here we're going to emphasize our lighting a little bit. I'll take some direct titanium white. Beautiful. Okay, now I'm very carefully going to pick up the cerulean blue. Again, potent color. You want to darken this up because we're towards the edge, but yet I still want it lighter than this. So the Payne's Gray is obviously much darker than the cerulean blue. And this side here, we're going to actually get into the negative light situation. See, now we're reflecting some of this blue against these objects here. Just a little bit, not too heavy. We're going to use the cerulean blue on the dark side. Okay, I want to add to this a little bit. I want to expand these rings, have them work together a little bit more. I'm going to put together a makeshift compass. Find my center here. Right about there. Okay, this too is going to create a little bit of depth for us. Pick up the Payne's Gray. This is going to be a very light indication here. Now as I get down here, I'm going to flip it from darkening the outside. I'm going to follow the line on the inside this time. All you need is a light indication. You don't have to put the whole thing in. That'll come on its own. Get rid of some of that. I'm taking a little cerulean blue and Payne's gray, and we're going to start defining this object up here. Going to help us define this. We're keeping the blues in this direction where we said we were going to. Okay, now I'm going to take a little permanent rose. I'm going to cut the inside of this ring here. It looks like you're looking right through it. It has no surface to it right at this point. So we're going to just do a simple wash of permanent rose on there. Just blend it. You really don't need that much. Change the appearance of it. Okay, take our wet brush. And what I'm going to do once that's dry, I'm going to put some blue on there and that'll turn that into a violet, a purplish color. Okay, a little bit of raw sienna. I'm going to put an inside ring in this one. It's starting to define that. Then we're going to come in up here with some dark, and you'll see what I mean. A little raw umber in this direction. Okay, that defines that a little bit better here now. Okay, now I want to take a little Payne's gray and a little crimson. I'm going to make a nice deep red, deep maroon color. What I need to do is here we're light against light, which I don't want. I want to darken this so I have dark against light, and then down here we're going to do just the opposite, which will give this form a little bit more dimension to it. The way we're going to do this is as such. Okay, as we lay this burgundy wash on top of the blue, starting to pick up a nice lavender. Okay, we're going to use a little raw sienna and white here. And then we're going to use that to accent the dark side of this. Okay, that's now it's starting to take a nice round shape. Okay, now I'm going into a deeper blue. Also allows me to increase the value a little in this area, which is nice. Okay, I'm adding a little bit more detail to the subject matter. Everything has to be balanced. Darken up this corner just a little bit, and this edging. Alright, gotta add a little more medium. Then we're gonna pick up some cadmium yellow and yellow ochre. And I want to use this to do a little highlighting here. I'm going to use it carefully because it's quite potent. If you use too much of it, the whole painting will get real earthy toned in a hurry. Okay, we're going to do a little negative lighting here. And the same thing here. And we're going to have to give this one a position, so I got one on top of the other. Okay, a little Payne's gray and some crimson again. Just gonna have to sharpen up this edge here. Creates a little more definition to the shape of the object. Sometimes it's okay to have them very faint, and other times you have to bring the edge right up. Kind of like being in focus and out of focus, really. Okay, now I have to go in and I have to start bringing out highlights again. I've got everything toned down a little bit. I've lost my edge as far as extreme white. I'm going to have to take this titanium white, kick the highlights up a little bit. You can see that brings the accents up again. Okay, so now I'm going to take this section. Here, our subject matter, size-wise, larger. The balance is good, okay, but this is more forward. These are farther back. You get that indication because of the blue and the size of the items. Here, I'm going to drop an edge in. That's going to take this section and push it back down. So it's going to, for starters, going to help us increase depth. Take this right here, and we're just going to hopefully it's straight. A little bit of medium to blend it. Now that brings that up, pushes that back. One thing I don't like is that it kind of haphazardly lines up with this, and that's, I don't like that. There we go. It changes the edge now, so there's no association between the two. Okay, so now I'm going to throw in a couple of contradictions, which is kind of fun to do. A little shading right here. Rid of a little oops. Okay. Now we just brought this up a little, push that back a little bit. And when this section goes back, because this is below this, and obviously that one goes back also. I'm going to flip to the other side of it. Bring this straight across. But now here, I shaded on the other side. That starts pushing and pulling again. Now I'm going to take this section here, where the most intense light is, and I'm going to push that farther back, and I'm going to do that using the same method here. What we're going to do is we're going to drop a little ledge here, a little shading. A big concern here is staying away from the center. This cannot line up in the center. That would be a big taboo. This is a little bit light compared to that. We're going to have to darken this up just a pinch. Okay, I want to put a little texture up here. There's a lot of smoothness going on here. I want to break that up a little bit. And I've decided to put some texture in here. And for that, I'm going to use, believe it or not, bubble wrap. I've done this a lot of times, and it really just works so nicely. Take your paint, don't make it too wet because then it'll run all over the place. Just wipe it on the inside. You know, the part that's sticking up, obviously. I'm going to take that or set it right here. Once I have that in there, I'm just going to take my brush while it's still wet and remove what's on the outside ring. That gives me a nice texture in there. Now, just like you shade an area like this, you can do the same thing here. As you move to one direction, you get lighter and lighter and lighter, and that'll fade also. You go like that, lighter, 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 lighter. Maybe we'll put this right here. Very mildly. Beautiful. That helps me change that surface. I've been fighting with that a little bit because it keeps coming up the same. Now there's no doubt. Something as simple as bubble wrap, you already have created a really nice texture. Now, if you want to give that a little bit more of a three-dimensional look, what you can do is actually take the same bubble wrap and you put a light color on it. If I go over the dark area, alright, we're going to try it right here. And we're going to do it right here. Wow, I love the way that works. It looks like the light's shining through that like a screen. In fact, we're going to have to do a little bit more of that. That just has a really nice look to it. Fantastic, love it. Okay, good. Look at that beautiful textured finish in there. Now this texture that I'm showing inside these circles, a little bit out of balance on it. All right, we're going to add a little bit more. We're going to try shading, so to speak, with the bubble wrap. See how that works out. Alright, okay, now I'm going to drop in some more highlights. Now if any of these highlights are a little too strong, very easy to go over them with a wash and tone them down. Not a big problem. Put a little highlights in there to accentuate the roundness of it. Okay, now I'm going to introduce some aqua green. This color I use mostly for reverse highlighting or negative lighting. Like we'll put a little bit. That's what you use to show an edge on the dark side of something where you can't put light, but yet you need to show the edge. And that's where the reverse lighting comes in. Okay, now I want to put a little bit of texture in the background. So we're going to take our templates and cover up these circles here. And what I've done is I've taken some titanium white acrylic, softened it up. I'm going to do a little splattering without getting it all over the centers. Very, very simple. And we can wipe out afterwards, it's not a problem. There's some areas that you're not comfortable with. Okay, now we picked up some more texture. Got all this little splatter going on. Got to clean a little bit of it out here. I've reached this point, I'm going to bring in another color. I'm going to bring in my favorite color, burnt sienna. I like where this is. Everything, the composition is where it needs to be. Love the color arrangement, but it is a little flat looking and a little cold looking. And nothing changes that like burnt sienna. In this particular case, we're going to use it just as a straight color, and we're going to incorporate that along with some yellows, and that'll warm this up enough just to where I feel it needs to be. This you want to start out using a little bit sparingly because it really can overwhelm quickly, but and if you use this color in conjunction with the yellow ochre, you get a really nice variety of earth tones. As you can see, we'll draw this down. Beautiful how it brings the color to life. It's a very nice thin wash. It's not too heavy. Again, you got to be careful with it because it can overwhelm very quickly. Okay, I find myself a little heavy down here. Don't be afraid of a water bottle and a paper towel handy. You can always knock some of it out while it's still wet. I'm going to take it out of the center here because I like what was going on there. I don't want that sienna in there altering that. Okay, now I'm going to go in with a little bit more yellow. This is a very deep, rich yellow. If you take your cadmium yellow light, you put just the lightest pinch of burnt sienna in it, it's almost gold. Okay, again, this is all done with washes. We start out underpainting, putting in a good solid base, keeping in mind as we're underpainting that we're going to put washes on top of it. And of course, when you put this yellow over this aqua green, it gives you a whole new version of it. Turns that green almost fluorescent, really. It just gives it a glow. I really like this color, but you have to tread lightly because it really is an overpowering color. Okay, this is going to kick up our version of green a little bit in the painting. When I put this yellow on top of the blues, be it the cobalt or the cerulean blue, it will shade them to a green. So. Okay, that really did the job. Between the burnt sienna and the yellow, warmed it up just enough so the blues go back a little farther, the warm colors come up a little more, and again increases our depth. Okay, we're getting pretty close to the finish line in this one, but I do want to put in a few more little details, and I do want to sharpen up some of the dark edging. I very seldom use black. Looks like a hole in a canvas if you use a solid black like Mars Black or what have you. That's why I like using the Payne's Gray. The Payne's Gray actually has color to it, a combination of Mars Black and Ultramarine Blue. And believe it or not, it'll actually appear on the canvas when you use it. It'll appear to be actually darker than a black could be. We're going to strengthen up these darks. Break down some of these conjunctions here where the lines come together and so on. I should probably do that one, but I don't because I love that corner, how that comes out. Now we're going to break the edges here a little bit. I hate to see these hard edges running right off the canvas. So I use a little black just to take them out of focus a little bit. And the same thing here. When I break this edge, this hard edge on towards the end of the canvas here, it keeps you inside, it keeps you in the painting, keeps the observer in the painting. When we get up here, I'm gonna Okay, now I'm going to go back in. I'm going to start pulling highlights out again. I do this quite a few times in the course of the painting because you just, as you're applying color, you keep toning it down, and after a while you lose those fresh whites. I'm going to go back to the permanent rose because I want to accent some of these dark sides here. A little reverse lighting. I get asked an awful lot, how do you know when it's done? The only answer I can give to that is very simple. I continuously look at the painting and I look for things that I think need changing or redoing. I need to highlight here, I want to add more color there. And I just keep doing this and doing this and doing this. And then suddenly you'll just reach a point where you look at it and you go, that's it. There's nothing left to do that I can see. And at that point, to me, it's complete. Just want to use this reverse lighting, strengthen up some of these images, some of these edges. Here I brought in a little bit of crimson. I don't want to overdo it with the rose. And that's what keeps it interesting. And as you can see, as I take this crimson and I bring it right into those darkest of areas, that negative light aspect kicks in and lets you read what's there a little better. Have to be a little cautious. Here I've got red just about dead center, offset here a little bit, but those two spots of raw crimson throws me off a little bit as far as balance goes. The only way to offset that is I've got to go from 2 to 3, obviously, and then create balance. That little hard edge rough cut right there does the job. Space from here to there is larger than this. Might bring a little bit in right here. Very mildly, because I don't want to create a pattern. I can draw some of this red down into here. I have to kill some of that splatter there. Now that makes it much more believable. Okay, I need to darken this a little bit. It's fine that this area is out of focus, but out of focus and then no edging, a little bit of a problem. Just a little indicator there to tie it in. Good. Now I'm just nitpicking, really. I'm going through it. I'm looking at little possibilities that might improve us, but I have to say I'm just about there. This here I'm basically cleaning up the edge. Okay, we're going to throw in a pinch more detail here, not too much, just a little bit. Okay, now I'm just going to bring up a couple areas quickly. The color has been toned down a little too much for me. I love how this green and blue works together over here. That's great. See, just a little spot of that aqua green gets that negative light really working well. Might even push a little of this on the outside here. Kind of breaks the rules, but they're my rules, so. Great, that works good. The only other thing is I have to pull a little bit of green over here somewhere. It's way too heavy on that side. Okay, now there's another thing I want to do here. I've got great texture going on. This right here is just, it's got depth, it's got all kinds of stuff going on. And what I want to do is I want to make something to compare that to. I want to put lenses in here. I want to make that look like glass, like it's a smooth finish. And that'll help accentuate the rough texture that we have on the outside. I'm trying to make this look like glass is not quite as successful as I'd like it to be, but usually works out nice. I'm going to take a very, very thin cerulean blue wash and putting that over these colors, and what that's doing is just creating the illusion of another surface. One thing's for sure, when you hit this right, it really, really looks nice. Okay, now for the appearance of glass, I'm going to use titanium white, basically right out of the tube. I'm going to break the edge. We don't want a hard edge. Just going to put a very, very faint touch of cerulean there because I don't want this 100% white. I want it just kick down just a pinch. There's a little bit of a reflection, just a very faint one. This here is going to work about the same process. Go real easy. If you overdo it, it doesn't appear to be transparent anymore, so you have to be a little cautious there. Just these little white curves here, basically what they're representing is the reflection of light off the glass. I'm going to go right up to 100% white, put my highlights in there. Cut the edges off a little. Good solid mark of white, which would be a direct reflection. Being that this lens is quite large, I'm going to drop one more in right there. Now there's one more thing I like to do. Take some light cadmium red. Find a spot. You look at the canvas where you're comfortable with putting it. My spot is right here. You put that spot of red in the painting when you're done. It gives the observer, boom, a place to start. Okay, now the only thing left to do is put our name on it. Okay, so my demonstration is complete. I showed you my process. We went over different techniques. We used blending and shading, and applied washes to create different colors. I had a great time with this. I hope you did too, and until next time, enjoy.